When Douglas heard Ichiro's open denial, he replied coldly, "I remember that you have 3 types of medicine that are marketed all over the world, namely the stomach powder, clear throat powder, and an eczema lotion. All of these 3 medicines originated from Chinese medication. One of it is from the Chinese physician Zhang Zhongjing's treatise on febrile and miscellaneous diseases. One of it is from the Han Dynasty's medicinal report, and the last one is from the Compendium of Materia Medica. Am I right?" The expression on Ichiro's face was a little ugly, but he continued denying it even at this time. "Dr. Simmons, are you joking? Those ancient Chinese pharmacopoeias 1 or 2,000 years ago are basically rubbish without any clinical application and scientific basis at all. Why would such a big pharmaceutical company like Kobayashi Pharma use this kind of backward pharmacopoeias from 1 or 2,000 years ago? This is really insulting." When the other Chinese physicians and doctors in the hall heard Ichiro publicly insulting the essence of the ancient Chinese medicine that was left behind by their ancestors, they could not help but scowl and curse in their hearts. Douglas replied in a righteous tone, "It just so happens that I will be free for the next few days. After the Chinese Medicine Expo, I will personally write up 3 research papers that include the prescriptions as well as ins and outs of all 3 types of the medicines that you are selling and marketing all over the world. I will also include a detailed record of our ancient pharmacopoeia. After I have sorted them out and published everything, it is really up to you to justify yourself." Ichiro's face turned black as soon as he heard Douglas' words. He was the vice chairman of Kobayashi Pharma, and the company had been founded by his own father. Therefore, naturally, he knew all the details of the company. The reason why Kobayashi Pharma could grow to its scale today was entirely because of their reliance on the prescriptions recorded in the ancient Chinese pharmacopoeia. Since the Japanese were very good at packaging, they simply took the ancient Chinese prescriptions and packaged them to a certain extent before declaring and promoting the fact that they had spent a lot of money on researching and coming up with the new prescriptions on their own. This had immediately opened up the market and increased the demands for the medication because of their very good curative effect. However, Kobayashi Pharma had always been reluctant to admit that their drug formula was indeed plagiarized from the ancient Chinese pharmacopoeia. Douglas had always been very dissatisfied with this fact, but he had never found an opportunity to protest about this matter. Unexpectedly, he had met Ichiro here today, and he naturally wanted to seek justice for Chinese medicine. Ichiro truly had not expected Douglas to accurately state the origins for the prescriptions of their 3 top medications. Out of fear that Douglas would actually publish a paper on the origins of those medications, Ichiro hurriedly said, "Dr. Simmons, is it really necessary for you to publish a thesis on the prescription for the medicine? I was just thinking of collaborating with you to come up with a new type of medicine. If you are agreeable, we can work together. However, if you are not agreeable, we can just choose not to work with one another. Why should we try to make things difficult for one another?" Douglas replied seriously, "Since you are going to blatantly deny that you have plagiarized the ancient Chinese medication, I have nothing else to say to you anymore. Goodbye." Then Douglas continued speaking, "By the way, no matter what it is, I will definitely write the thesis." Ichiro ground his teeth as he looked at Douglas. After a short while, he decided to hold back his anger and simply nodded before he said, "Well, since you are not willing to collaborate and work together with me, I will not try to force you to do so, Dr. Simmons." After that, Ichiro continued speaking, "I do not want the prescription for the medicine anymore. Instead, can you sell the medicine to me? I am willing to pay $50 million for the pill. My father was involved in a car accident the year before this, and he is still lying in bed because of high paraplegia. As his son, I really hope that I will be able to cure him." Douglas was shocked when he heard Ichiro's offer of $50 million. He quickly glanced at Charlie. After all, the magic pill belonged to Charlie in the first place. If Charlie was willing to sell Ichiro one of his magic pills for $50 million, the decision would really be up to him then. However, Charlie secretly waved his hand at Douglas. He did not care about $50 million at all. Moreover, Charlie did not want to sell his medicine to a Japanese guy who would plagiarize Chinese medication even if the latter offered him $50 million. For a single pill. When Douglas saw Charlie waving his hand, he immediately replied, "Sorry, Mr. Ikaro. The medicine has already been used up, and I am afraid that there is no more of the same pill in this world now." Ikaro gritted his teeth before he nodded with a gloomy expression on his face. After that, he said, "Dr. Simmons, I understand. I will not try to force you to do anything anymore." After he was done speaking, Ikaro turned around and left immediately. At this time, Charlie said to Douglas, "This Japanese man seems a bit insidious. If he really thinks that you have the prescription for high-level paraplegia, you should be more careful. After all, once this magical pill is mass-produced, he would be able to gain absolute wealth in this world." There was a movie called I Am Not the God of Medicine not too long ago, and it was about a Chinese leukemia patient. Since he could not afford the extremely expensive medicine produced by Western cultures, he could only go to India to buy some imitation medication. Through this movie, you could actually see how black-hearted those large pharmaceutical groups could be just because they wanted to make some money. When a new drug was developed, a patient needed to spend at least $20,000 to $30,000 a month to afford the medication. What else could the patient do? Kobayashi Pharma also wanted to get their hands on a few special drugs that they could mass-produce to sell at a high price. That was the reason why they had set their sights on Anthony. In truth, Ikaro felt that if he had the prescription to create a pill that could cure high paraplegia, it would be equivalent to having a powerful tool for collecting money. A person with high paraplegia was unable to get out of bed, walk, or even urinate voluntarily. This often made the patients feel that it would be better for them to be dead than alive because if they were alive, their families would have to suffer alongside them. If a billionaire suffered from high paraplegia, he would definitely be more than willing to fork out $50 million or more just to receive a single pill that could cure his disease. If a billionaire like Bill Gates had high paraplegia, he could actually charge him $50 billion for the medicine. As for the poor people who had high paraplegia, Ikaro did not care about their life or death at all. What did it have to do with him anyway? He would never sell the medicine at a cheap price. However, Ikaro had not expected Douglas to directly decline and turn down his request. Therefore, he could not help but feel a little angry. Since Ikaro had already conducted his investigation before meeting Douglas, he knew that Douglas still had the magical pill that could cure high paraplegia. Ikaro only needed to find a way to get his hands on the magical pill. After that, he would be able to bring it back to Japan with him so that his company's pharmacists could analyze and study the ingredients in the magical pill so that they could eventually create the magical pill on their own. Douglas could already figure out what was going on in Ikaro's mind. After all, it would be impossible for a man with such huge interest to give up so easily. Douglas knew that Ikaro would definitely look for other ways and methods to get his hands on the magical pill. Therefore, he told Charlie, "Please be rest assured, Mr. Wade, I will be careful." At this time, Charlie replied earnestly, "It is useless for you to be cautious. You have to understand the principle that everyone is innocent until they are proven guilty." Douglas hurriedly asked, "Mr. Wade, what do you think I should do then? I have been carrying the magical pill that you gave me around with me at all times. If they were to try and snatch it away from me, then—" Charlie smiled slightly before he said, "I will temporarily refine a few more pills for you later, and you should carry those pills around with you. If someone tries to take the magical pill from you, you should give them those pills instead." In Charlie's memory, he recalled that there was a kind of terminal lucidity pill recorded in the Nine Heavens Profound book. This kind of pill was actually a type of poison. The patient would show great recovery in just a short time after taking the pill. However, after regaining his life and energy, the last of his body's energy would be completely exhausted, and he would suffer sudden death. Charlie did not know whether Ikaro's father truly had high-level paraplegia, but if Ikaro tried to steal the magical pill from Douglas, he would definitely be out of luck then. Moreover, it was not that difficult to refine the terminal lucidity pill. All that was needed was just some of the more common medicinal materials. As it was not time for the auction of the purple ginseng to begin yet, Charlie took advantage of this opportunity to look for Graham before he gave him a list of a dozen medicinal herbs and materials that he needed. Graham hurriedly gathered all of the medicinal herbs and materials for him. After that, Charlie went to the lounge that had been rented by Graham before refining 4 of the terminal lucidity pill on the spot. Chinese medication was always made out of different medicinal herbs and materials. Therefore, after boiling the herbs, no matter what the medicine was for, and no matter how different it was, the color of the medicine would still be dark brown. It was also the same for pills. The color of the terminal lucidity pill was almost the same as the previous magical pill that he had concocted before this. Moreover, Charlie deliberately made the size of the terminal lucidity pill the same size as the magical pill before this. That way, no one would be able to tell the difference with their naked eye. After he was done, Charlie returned to the auction hall and gave Douglas the 4 pills when no one else was paying any attention to them. Charlie also took back the remaining 1.5 magical pill from Douglas so that he could keep it safe for him for the time being. Then, it was finally time for the auction of the rare 300-year-old purple ginseng. The host quickly stepped on stage before he said, "Next, we will start bidding for our final medicinal herb, the 300-year-old purple ginseng. Before we begin the auction, we would like to invite the world-renowned Dr. Simmons to come on stage to personally appraise this superb purple ginseng on our behalf." Douglas had already agreed to the organizer's request for him to appraise the superb purple ginseng on stage before attending the expo. Therefore, when the host called for him, Douglas quickly walked toward the center of the stage before taking the superb purple ginseng in his hands. After carefully identifying and inspecting the purple ginseng, Douglas said, "Everyone, in my humble opinion, the actual lifespan of this superb purple ginseng is actually about 350 years or even more. Therefore, I believe that this purple ginseng can truly be said to be the best amongst the best, so you can all rest assured today." Everyone present at the scene exclaimed out loud as soon as they heard Douglas' words. They initially thought that the purple ginseng was 300 years old. However, who would have expected it to be more than 350 years old instead? This was simply amazing. Charlie could not help but look at Douglas in admiration at this time. This was because Charlie did not expect Douglas to be able to tell the actual age of the top-quality purple ginseng. It seemed as though Douglas truly had a very strong Chinese medical background and skills. Just then, the host smiled before he said, "Dr. Simmons is a well-known doctor who has studied and specialized in both ancient and modern medicine. Just a few days ago, Dr. Simmons actually cured a patient with high paraplegia and created a medical miracle. Therefore, I believe that everyone can rest assured that this is indeed a superb purple ginseng based on Dr. Simmons' honest appraisal." When Douglas returned to his seat, he suddenly heard someone speaking behind him. "Dr. Simmons, high-level paraplegia is a terminal illness that cannot possibly be cured by Chinese or Western medicine. How did you cure it? Why am I still in disbelief that you can really cure it? Tell me the truth. Was it simply luck?" Douglas turned around as he looked in the direction of the voice. After seeing who it was, Anthony smiled before he said, "Chelsea Fox, what are you doing here instead of staying at the National Medical Center?" The National Medical Center. The people around them could not help but exclaim in shock when they heard Douglas' words. The National Medical Center was very prestigious, and any representative of the National Medical Center was of the highest level of medical skills in the whole country. Chelsea laughed when she heard Douglas' words and said, "I just came here today to see if you really could cure high-level paraplegia. Since it sounds so mysterious, I do not completely believe it at all." Douglas smiled slightly before he said, "It might really just be rumors then. You honestly do not need to believe it at all." Chelsea was stunned because she did not expect Douglas to be so humble. She had expected him to be more direct. However, since he had blatantly denied curing high paraplegia, Chelsea did not know what else to say. At this time, the host said, "We will start the bid for the 300-year-old purple ginseng now. The starting price for the purple ginseng is $5 million. Each increase in the bid should not be less than $1 million. Everyone, you may start bidding now." The host smiled before he stood aside immediately. As soon as he was done speaking, Jeffrey, who was seated in the back row, quickly raised his placard before yelling, $10 million! Everyone was left speechless because no one expected the price of the 300-year-old purple ginseng to be doubled in the first bid itself. Jeffrey knew that if people continued bidding for the premium purple ginseng, the price of the purple ginseng would probably cost $20 to $30 million in the end. Therefore, he simply doubled the price of the purple ginseng in the first bid just so that he could frighten some people away. He was also hoping that he would be able to take the purple ginseng away at a lower price instead. $11 million! A middle-aged man in the hall also shouted as he raised his placard. Jeffrey glanced at the man in disdain before he raised his placard again and said, $15 million. $16 million. Someone spoke up again. $25 million, Jeffrey yelled as he held up his placard again. In fact, Jeffrey was simply helping Kenneth to participate in the auction this time. Kenneth would be the one bearing the price of the bid today. Therefore, he did not feel distressed at all. The price of $25 million made many people think of giving up. Even though the rare purple ginseng was very good and effective, the effect of the plant was very limited. Therefore, $25 million was already a very high price to pay for the ginseng. At this time, someone in the hall suddenly shouted, "I will pay $30 million for it." Everyone hurriedly looked around only to discover that the bid was actually made by Charlie, who was seated next to Douglas. Jeffrey and Kenneth really did not expect Charlie to be challenging them in this auction. Therefore, both of them exchanged glances with one another before Kenneth directly took over the placard in Jeffrey's hand and held it up, yelling, $40 million! Kenneth knew very well that Charlie was a very difficult person to deal with. If he was adamant about challenging him, the price of the purple ginseng would definitely end up being very high. Moreover, Kenneth knew that it would be absolutely impossible for Charlie to be able to afford the purple ginseng. He merely assumed that Charlie must have known that he would need this superb purple ginseng to restore his manhood, and that was the reason why he was deliberately raising the price so that he could cause more trouble for him. That was why Kenneth called for $40 million immediately, because he wanted to scare Charlie off. Unexpectedly, Charlie raised his placard again before saying lightly, $50 million. Charlie had the cash check for $100 million that Warnia had given to him sitting inside his pocket at this time. Not too long ago, Charlie had accidentally given this check to his mother-in-law, Elaine, by mistake, and it had almost caused a huge catastrophe. Therefore, Charlie had been looking for an opportunity to use this check. As he thought about it, he had finally decided that he could just use the $100 million to buy the purple ginseng today. Anyways, besides the $100 million cash check, Charlie had a lot of money in his bank card. In his eyes, this check was just a piece of waste paper that he did not know how to deal with. He was actually glad that it would finally come in handy today. As soon as Kenneth heard Charlie bidding for $50 million, Kenneth almost fainted in anger. He gritted his teeth before he said to Jeffrey, "That horrible piece of trash! He is deliberately fighting with me! $50 million? How could he possibly afford to pay $50 million for the purple ginseng?" Jeffrey also nodded as he cursed. "That kid is really a very bad and trashy person. This purple ginseng is worth at most $20 million. It is truly a waste to buy it for $50 million. In fact, it is actually a very foolish move." Kenneth ground his teeth again before he said, "Damn it! I will bid against him one last time. I do not believe that he will be able to outbid me." After that, Kenneth raised his placard before he yelled, "I will pay $60 million. By this time, Kenneth was certain that Charlie would not dare to call for a price higher than $60 million. Unexpectedly, Charlie raised his placard without any hesitation as he yelled, "I will pay $80 million. Kenneth stood up and exploded immediately as he yelled, "What do you mean by this? The one with the last name Wade? Why the hell are you trying to outbid me for this purple ginseng? Are you sure you can afford to pay $80 million for it?" Charlie smiled as he replied, "You are such a good grandson. Don't worry, Grandpa can afford it." Many people at the scene knew that Kenneth had once knelt before Charlie and had called him his father and grandfather. Therefore, they laughed out loud as soon as they heard Charlie's words. Kenneth, not wanting to lose any more face, grit his teeth as he said, "Okay then, you really have the guts. I will pay $90 million for it." Jeffrey tugged at his sleeves before he said, "Chairman Wilson, $90 million is way too expensive for the purple ginseng. That thing is not worth that much money. Don't act so impulsively and be fooled by that bastard. $90 million just to buy that purple ginseng? No ginseng was worth that much money unless it was for a ginseng that was more than 1,000 years old. Even though Kenneth was extremely rich, he was not an extravagant or wasteful person. He already felt a burn in his pocket when he had to spend $15 million just to have sexual intercourse with Wendy. Kenneth could really feel the hole in his wallet now that he would have to spend $90 million on a piece of ginseng, but no matter what, he had to find a way to cure himself. It had already been so many days, and he still had no feeling down there at all. It was as though there was nothing there whatsoever. If this continued even longer, Kenneth felt that he would really lose hope in life. Therefore, he made up his mind that he would only pay $90 million for the purple ginseng and nothing more than that. At this time, Charlie calmly held up the placard in his hand before saying, "Then I will pay $100 million for it." Kenneth trembled uncontrollably as he cursed out loud, "What are you trying to do, you piece of trash? Do you really find it that enjoyable to stir up trouble and mess around with me?" Charlie smiled faintly before he replied, "Well, I am simply interested in the purple ginseng. Of course, I have no choice but to bid for it then. What is the matter? Are other people not allowed to bid for something just because Chairman Wilson is interested in it?" Kenneth continued cursing. "Do you think I don't know anything about you? You are just the useless son-in-law of the Wilson family. The entire Wilson family does not even have $100 million, so how could you possibly have that much money?" Then Kenneth turned around to look at the host before he said, "I suggest that you drive this guy out of the auction hall. He is just stirring up trouble here. He cannot possibly have so much money to pay for the purple ginseng." Douglas frowned and said out loud, "You can put all of Mr. Wade's expenses under my tab today. I have more than enough money to pay for it." Graham also spoke up at this time. "Mr. Wade can also use the Quinton family's funds any time that he wants to." Everyone inside the auction hall was shocked when they heard Douglas and Graham's words. Who was this young man? Dr. Simmons was an internationally renowned doctor, and Graham was the head of the Quinton family. Why would both of them be so willing to pay for him? Moreover, it was not a small amount. This was $100 million. Charlie smiled before he said, "Don't worry. It's just $100 million so I can still afford it. After all, I happen to have a $100 million cash check in my pocket. It has already been sitting in my pocket for more than half a month and is starting to get on my nerves. I am glad that I finally have the opportunity to use it today." Kenneth replied contemptuously, "What do you think you are bragging about now? Do you really think that everyone here is a 3-year-old child? You have a $100 million cash check in your pocket? Do you even know how much money that is?" Charlie smirked before he said, "You are seriously the trashiest old man I have ever seen in this world." Charlie then took out the $100 million cash check that Warnia had given to him out of his pocket. Since the check had already been sitting in his pocket for so many days, it was all crumpled up and looked like a piece of waste paper. Charlie raised the check in his hand before speaking to the host. "Sir, why don't you send your financial staff over here to check the authenticity of the check?" Kenneth sneered as he said, "Damn it! It is just a piece of waste paper, and you dare to say that it is a check for $100 million. If it is really a check for $100 million, I will use $100 million to wipe my ass tonight." Charlie ignored him as he continued holding up the check indifferently. At this time, the host brought his financial staff over to Charlie so that he could hand the check over to them. After inspecting the check for a short while, the financial staff immediately said, "This cash check has a face value of $100 million. It is an authentic check." Everyone at the scene was shocked. This young man actually treated a $100 million check like a piece of waste paper in his pocket. What would he have done if he had accidentally lost it? What if the check accidentally slipped out of his pocket while he was squatting at the toilet? What if he had accidentally thrown the check into the washing machine to wash with his clothes? Oh my God! It was shocking for them to even think about it. Kenneth's face twitched faintly in anger. He really did not understand why this piece of trash could actually have so much money. Wasn't he just a useless son-in-law of the Wilson family? Charlie asked the host, Since no one can outbid me and since I can afford to pay $100 million for it, the superb purple ginseng should belong to me now, right? The host regained his senses and said immediately, "Now I am going to announce that this 300-year-old purple ginseng belongs to—" Before he could finish his sentence, Kenneth hurriedly said, "Stop! I am going to increase the bid now." Everyone at the scene was shocked yet again. The auction had begun at $5 million, and the bid was already at $100 million now. Was he really going to continue bidding and increasing the price? The purple ginseng was not even worth that much money. Were these two people insane? Jeffrey hurriedly reminded him, "Chairman Wilson, it is truly a waste to spend $100 million just to buy that piece of purple ginseng. You could do so much more with this amount of money. Why would you want to waste it just like that?" At this time, Kenneth quickly asked, "If I can't get my hands on the purple ginseng, what about your new medicine? How would I be able to cure my illness then?" As both of them were talking, a middle-aged man who was slightly bald rushed over to them before he said to Jeffrey, "I am sorry, Mr. Weaver. I am late because I was waiting for the laboratory results." The person speaking was the chief pharmacist at Weaver Pharmaceutical. He had just rushed over here from the pharmaceutical factory after checking out the benefits and uses of the purple ginseng on behalf of Jeffrey. Jeffrey hurriedly asked, "Professor Cruz, I am so glad that you're here. Do you think that the piece of purple ginseng on stage is worth $100 million? $100 million? Professor Cruz shook his head as he laughed slightly. "It is not worth that much money. The market price for a 300-year-old purple ginseng should only be $30 million at most. No one should be paying a higher amount than that. Only a fool would buy a 300-years-old purple ginseng for $100 million. What about Chairman Wilson's illness, then?" Jeffrey asked immediately. At this time, Professor Cruz replied with a confident expression on his face. "In fact, we do not need to use a 300-year-old purple ginseng to concoct the medication. All we need to do is find a few 100-year-old purple ginseng and purify it so that we can use that instead. The market value for a 100-year-old purple ginseng is only about $1 million. 5 of them would only cost you $5 million. Moreover, the price-performance ratio for the 5 100-year-old purple ginseng far exceeds that of the 300-year-old purple ginseng." As they were discussing this matter, the host suddenly asked, "Chairman Wilson, are you going to add to the bid or not? Please state the specific amount directly. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for us to continue the bid." After listening to Professor Cruz's words, Kenneth felt confident that he should not allow himself to be taken advantage of. Therefore, he decided to give this opportunity to Charlie and let him waste his money instead. Kenneth immediately shook his head before he said, "I have decided not to bid any more. It is simply mentally retarded for anyone to spend $100 million on just a piece of purple ginseng. Only people who have no brains would do this kind of thing." Everyone in the hall started booing him immediately. If you do not have the money, just admit that you do not have the money. If you are reluctant to spend the money, just admit that you are reluctant to do so. Why would you call someone else mentally retarded just because they were willing to spend that amount of money? Why was he such a sore loser? Kenneth felt very irritated as he was booed by many people, but he did not dare to say anything at all. Therefore, he could only bite the bullet and endure the humiliation in silence. No one would say no to money anymore. He did not think that it was worth spending so much money just to save his own face and reputation. At this time, the host quickly announced, $100 million once, $100 million twice, $100 million 3 times. Deal! Congratulations, Mr. Wade! Charlie nodded in satisfaction before he looked at Kenneth and said, "Well, let me just give you a friendly reminder now. You will never be able to cure your illness or restore your manhood with any medicine at all, so I would like to advise you not to waste your efforts." Everyone looked at Kenneth at this time. Kenneth felt very ashamed and annoyed, and he cursed out loud. "You are the impotent one. Your whole family is impotent. I am still very able and well." Charlie smiled faintly before he said, "Whoever is impotent would know for themselves. Some people cannot get hard where they should and only have a hard mouth. What is the point in that?" Everyone laughed out loud at this time. Was it true? The famous and reputable Chairman Wilson had really lost his manhood? It seemed as though it was true. Otherwise, why would he try so hard to bid for a premium purple ginseng? Moreover, he was even here with Jeffrey from the Weaver family today. Everyone here today was people from the medical field. Everyone knew that the Weaver family was currently studying a new drug that could strengthen male virility and greatly restore a person's manhood. It seemed as though the reason why Kenneth and Jeffrey were here together today was simply because Kenneth wanted to be the first person to test the drug. Kenneth ground his teeth in anger as he blurted out immediately, "You with the last name Wade, don't try and give people the wrong assumption here. I am still a very able man." "Well, you even gave your own lover away to someone else, and you are still saying that you are an able man? If you are truly so capable, why would you give your woman away to someone else?" Kenneth's face flushed red in anger before he sputtered angrily, What are you talking about?" Wendy also questioned him angrily. "Charlie, why are you ruining other people's innocence for no reason at all?" When Charlie saw the angry and desperate expressions on their faces, he simply sneered as he looked away. He could not be bothered to continue arguing with them. Therefore, he simply took the 300-year-old purple ginseng from the host before he spoke to Douglas and Graham. "All right, then. There is nothing else that I'm interested in here anymore. I am leaving now." Having said that, Charlie stood up as he prepared to walk out of the auction hall. At this time, Douglas and Graham hurriedly said, "Mr. Wade, let us send you home." "No need." Charlie waved his hand slightly before he said, "I can go home by myself. Both of you should stay here and socialize with everyone." As he spoke, he glanced at Icaro, who was secretly staring at Douglas from not too far away. After that, Charlie quickly reminded Douglas, "Dr. Simmons, if anyone tries to steal the medicine from you today, make sure that you do not resist or fight back. You should just give it to him if he wants it that badly. Do you understand?" Douglas smiled before he nodded immediately. "Mr. Wade, don't worry, I understand." At this time, Aurora had her eyes on Charlie. In fact, she was feeling a little anxious when she saw that he was about to leave. After hesitating for a short while, Aurora suddenly spoke up in a low voice. "Mr. Wade, can I walk you out?" When Charlie first saw Aurora today, he could already tell that she had something on her mind. However, she did not dare to talk about it. Now that she had finally found the courage to speak up, Charlie nodded before he said, "All right then, you can walk me out." Aurora looked at Charlie with a grateful expression on her face and said, "Mr. Wade, please come with me." Then Aurora accompanied Charlie to the door. Charlie looked at Aurora, who was still hesitant to speak, before he asked, "Aurora, tell me honestly, do you have something on your mind?" Aurora bit her lower lip gently as she asked embarrassedly, "Mr. Wade, you could tell that I had something on my mind?" "It is already written all over your face, so how could I possibly not know?" Charlie smiled slightly before he said, "If you have encountered any difficulties, please do not hesitate to ask for my help. You can just tell me about it." Aurora subconsciously touched her cheeks, and she could feel that her cheeks were burning hot. Even though she was originally a very brave and cool person with a cheerful personality, she would always be very shy and embarrassed in front of Charlie. After calming herself down, she spoke up seriously. "Mr. Wade, there is indeed something on my mind. I want to ask you for your help." Charlie nodded before he said, "Okay, tell me about it." Aurora explained, "Mr. Wade, I have a very good friend in college. She used to have a very lively, cheerful, and positive personality. However, I feel that she has been brainwashed by her boyfriend recently, and it seems as though she is doing a lot of extreme things nowadays. There was one time when she even tried to jump off a building after fighting with her boyfriend. She only stopped because I kept persuading her not to jump. After that, her boyfriend continued brainwashing her, and she even tried to swallow some sleeping pills to commit suicide. I only managed to save her after telling my teachers about it." As she spoke about this, Aurora had a sad expression on her face, and she continued, "But now, it seems as though my best friend has already been completely brainwashed by her boyfriend. She did not even thank me for saving her life, but instead she feels as though I am the one who destroyed her relationship with her boyfriend. She already quarreled with me a couple of times and has severed all contact with me. I felt that there was definitely something wrong with her over the past few days, and I wanted to try and persuade her, but she scolded me once again. I am honestly afraid that something bad will happen to her if this continues, Charlie asked in surprise. Brainwashed? Is her boyfriend selling her? Aurora shook her head before she explained, No, it's not a pyramid scheme. I gathered some information and found out that this is actually a very popular means of chasing, conquering, and controlling girls amongst guys nowadays. Aurora continued speaking indignantly. These scumbags seem to pursue girls before they make these innocent girls fall in love with them on the premise that they love them too. However, they are only trying to control these girls so that the girls would be willing to do anything for them, even going as far as to die for them just to please them. However, many of these innocent girls are sinking deeper and deeper into it, and they eventually suffer serious injuries. Some of these girls also end up losing their lives because of these scumbags. They are simply a bunch of unforgivable bastards. Charlie frowned before he asked, There is actually a scumbag like this? Yes, Aurora replied immediately. Before this happened to my best friend, I really did not expect that there would be this kind of scumbag in this world. However, after looking into it, I discovered that there are actually many scumbags like this. They simply take pleasure in playing around with women and have no conscience at all. Charlie replied coldly, Each of them owes their lives to great women who gave birth to them. But they are actually taking pleasure in playing around with women. These kinds of scumbags are simply the scum of society. Aurora replied indignantly, This guy is not just a regular scumbag, and this is not the first time he is doing something like this. Last year, a girl in our school was pregnant and she jumped down from a building. I heard rumors stating that he was the one who instigated her to do so. Furthermore, he also repeatedly insulted another girl because she did not lose her virginity to him. As a result of that, the girl felt that she was very dirty and unclean, and she left behind a suicide note stating that she wanted to get rid of her own filth. After that, the girl committed suicide by jumping and drowning herself in the river. I even heard rumors that about 4 to 5 girls were also forced to drop out of school because they were suffering from mental disorders because of his constant abuse. 2 of those girls eventually died. Charlie could only frown. He had never thought that there would actually be this kind of scumbag in this world. Therefore, he quickly said firmly, In that case, I will make sure that I look into this matter for you. You should arrange for me to meet up with you and your best friend. Aurora was so excited and relieved that she burst into tears immediately. Then, she grabbed Charlie's hand before she said, Mr. Wade, if you are willing to make a move, we will definitely be able to save my best friend. Charlie replied, Since this kind of thing comes from constant psychological hints at work, I am not sure whether I will be able to relieve your best friend from the other party's control and manipulation. However, I will try my best to help you. Aurora nodded repeatedly. I believe that you can do it. After that, Aurora said, Mr. Wade, why don't you come to my school tonight? I will bring you to meet my best friend. Okay, Charlie replied. If it's possible, I would also like to see the scumbag who is toying around with your best friend. Is he also from your college? Yes, Aurora replied. He is one of the most handsome guys in school and has a great reputation. He is handsome, rich, and very good at coaxing girls. That is the reason why so many girls always fall for him, and that is also the reason why he could destroy so many girls. Charlie sneered before he said, All right then. I would like to meet a scumbag like him who tries to use psychological hints and manipulation to control someone else. I would really love it if I could give him a taste of his own medicine. Charlie made an appointment to meet up with Aurora at the Oros University of Finance and Economics, where she was studying later in the evening. After that, he returned home with his 300-years-old purple ginseng. On the way home, Charlie called Orville and Isaac respectively, telling them that someone was thinking of getting their hands on the medicine in Douglas' hands. Therefore, he asked them to send someone to protect Douglas in secret, as they kept an eye on Icaro. As Isaac had already spent many years in Oris Hill, he had undue influence in the city. Charlie asked Isaac to set up a secret post directly at the airport to keep an eye on Icaro so that he would not be able to leave Oris Hill so casually. He knew that Icaro had to be planning to take the magical pill away from Douglas so that he could bring it back to Japan with him to analyze and study its ingredients. Therefore, Charlie was planning to set a big trap for Ichiro. Meanwhile, Ichiro had completely no idea that Charlie would have already woven an invisible net and laid out such a huge trap for him. Later that evening, Charlie went to the Aarhus University of Finance and Economics to meet up with Aurora as promised. When he arrived at the university, Aurora was already waiting for him outside the school gate. When Aurora saw Charlie, she hurriedly stepped forward before she said anxiously, "Mr. Wade, it seems as though my best friend is planning to jump off the building. Please come and take a look with me." Charlie hurriedly asked, "What is the current situation?" Aurora replied, "I was secretly observing my best friend in the cafeteria during dinner." The scumbag was scolding her again and even gave her a tight slap across her face before he left. "My best friend kept crying, and she has been wandering by the artificial lake for a long time. I'm afraid that she will lose control of herself and act rashly. A few of my classmates are keeping an eye on her now." Charlie nodded before he said, "It should not be too late. Take me there immediately." In fact, Charlie had already used his cell phone to look up the details that Aurora had told him about. It was referred to as the art of chatting in the scumbag circle, and it had now developed into a somewhat deformed and abnormal state. These people took pleasure in toying around with women and hurting them, and they were completely immersed in the situation as they found extreme pleasure and enjoyment in doing so. Many of these girls were easily confused and manipulated, and they would do things to hurt themselves. Some of them would even be willing to sacrifice their own lives to please the men. Therefore, Charlie was very anxious and furious at this time, and he simply wanted to meet the girl so that he could find out what was going on with her. The Aarhus University of Finance and Economics was very famous, and it was one of the top 3 financial universities in the country. The university covered a vast area, and it had a very beautiful scenery surrounding it. Moreover, there was also a very large artificial lake inside the campus. Aurora quickly led Charlie toward the artificial lake, and a girl who was hiding in the dark said, "Aurora, you're finally back. Luna has already been wandering by the lake for a long time. I am really scared that she will act rashly and jump into the lake." Aurora hurriedly asked, "Where is she now?" The girl quickly pointed at a dark shadow near the artificial lake that was not too far away and said, "She's over there." As soon as Charlie looked at the direction that the girl was pointing at, he saw that the dark shadow had already jumped into the lake with a splash. The few girls screamed in fright, and Charlie ran over to the girl and dove into the lake without any hesitation at all. After that, he quickly grabbed hold of the girl who was about to sink to the bottom of the lake. The girl was courting her own death intentionally, and when she felt that someone was picking her up and pushing her toward the surface of the water, she started crying and shouting, "Don't save me! Don't save me! Let me die! I am not pure! I am not clean! I've let Keon down! I've betrayed his love for me!" Charlie dragged her to the shore as he reprimanded her coldly. "Your parents are the ones who gave you your body, hair, and skin. Don't you think that you are letting your parents down by hurting yourself just because of a scumbag?" The girl continued, wailing, "Please, just let me die. Let me die now. I am just a dirty and impure person. I am too ashamed to face my parents now. I am only bringing them shame by staying alive. They will only be free when I am dead." Charlie dragged her to the shore with ease before he finally threw her on the grass and yelled at her furiously, "Damn it! You should not only be living for yourself, but you should also be living for your parents. They worked so hard to raise you and nurture you until you became an adult. They watched over you as you grew up, and they provided for your education. You should not be committing suicide by jumping into a lake just because of a scumbag like him. You should become a talented pillar so that you could make your parents proud by contributing to the country and society instead." The few girls around her were also crying at this time as they persuaded her, "Luna, why are you so stupid? Do you really think that it's worth hurting yourself just because of that scumbag?" The girl called Luna broke down and kept crying as she said, "I am so dirty. I feel so sorry toward him. If I do not die, he will also feel very tortured because of me. I do not want him to feel tortured at all. I want him to be happy." Charlie could not help but frown at this time. It seemed as though Luna had been seriously brainwashed by the other party. Charlie immediately said to the other girls, "You should all step aside first. Let me chat with her privately for a short while." The other girls were a little hesitant, but Aurora was looking at Charlie with eyes filled with admiration. After that, she quickly said to her classmates, "Let's step aside for a short while. We should let Brother Charlie try to persuade her." The other girls quickly nodded as soon as they heard Aurora's words, and they retreated a distance immediately. Luna was soaking wet as she sat on the muddy ground on the shore as she muttered to herself, "Let me die. A filthy woman like me does not deserve to be alive at all. I want to use my death to prove to Keon that my feelings for him are real. Yes, I have to use my death to prove to him that I truly love him very much." Charlie could tell that Luna was already very confused and her mind was in utter chaos. Someone must have repeatedly instilled this kind of psychological hint in her that she was dirty, filthy, and she deserved to die. Over time, she would unswervingly think that she was indeed a very filthy person who should be dead. This kind of psychological manipulation required more than half a year to deepen, ferment, and breed continuously. In other words, the scumbag had already been brainwashing her for more than half a year so that she would try to take her own life. Right then, Charlie suddenly thought of a powerful psychological hypnosis technique that he had learnt from the Nine Heavens Profound book. Thus, he gathered a little spiritual energy in his body and focused it on his fingertips before tapping Luna lightly on her forehead and saying, "Luna, look at me." Luna was immediately hypnotized and she raised her head obediently to look at Charlie. Charlie asked, "Can you tell me what is going on?" Luna replied blankly, "I had a boyfriend when I was still a freshman and I gave my virginity to him on impulse. After that, I met Keon. He had been pursuing me for a long time and I really like him very much. However, he knows that I am not a virgin. He would feel very disgusted with me every time we have sexual intercourse, and he will beat me, scold me, and say that I am a very filthy person. He would also say that I betrayed his trust and I am letting him down." Charlie nodded slightly before he said in a supremely majestic tone, "Luna, can you make sure that you remember and keep whatever I am going to say next in your mind for a lifetime until you die? You can never forget what I am going to say, okay?" Luna had already been completely hypnotized by Charlie, and Charlie's hypnotism was assisted by spiritual energy. Hence, the intensity of his hypnosis far exceeded the psychological hint that the scumbag had been manipulating her with all this while. Luna hurriedly replied, "Yes, you can give me your orders. I will make sure that I go all out to fulfill it." Charlie then said, word by word, "Remember that what you did is what most couples in the world would naturally do. That is your own choice, and it is your own decision to make. It is not filthy at all, and your life is very precious in this world. Your life does not only belong to you alone, but it also belongs to your parents and everyone who truly loves and cares for you. A person who truly loves and cares for you would never persuade you to give up your life or ask you to die for them. So you must remember to cherish your life in the future and stay away from scumbags. Continue being filial to your parents and make sure that you contribute to society in the future. Do you understand me?"